The Department of Science and Technology is a national government department that aims to boost socio-economic development in South Africa through research and innovation. One of the key aspects of this is the generation and dissemination of knowledge, learning and evidence to inform and influence how science and technology may be used to achieve inclusive development.
This government has prioritized rural development, and because we are a Department of Science and Technology that has a mandate to then look at knowledge to solve problems, we therefore partner with certain government departments in order then to understand what are the problems or the challenges they have, and how can we use the knowledge that we generate in the institutions that we finance to solve those problems.
We are looking at ways and means of ensuring that innovation is used to improve service delivery, but also to ensure that the rural communities have got access to infrastructure. So that's the context in which this Innovation Partnership for Rural Development Program was established. The intention was to say, how do we introduce innovation in municipalities? How do these municipalities adopt these technologies and innovation to improve service delivery?
The South African Constitution gives all citizens the right to dignity. The provision of sanitation forms part of this basic right, regardless of where you may live. Low-pour flush toilets combine the advantages of both waterborne and VIP systems, while eliminating their disadvantages. Developed for the South African rural landscape, the low-pour flush toilets incorporate twin leach pits, with filling rates depending on the number of people using the toilet and the ground conditions. The project was successfully piloted in the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape and Mpumalanga.
It was hard. When we want to pee, we went to the forest. Even if it's dark, it's easy. My life is easy because the toilets are nearby. It's easy to go to the toilet. Even when it's dark, flashlight to go to the toilet.
In 2014, a South African point-of-use technology was developed to address the issue of access to safe drinking water. Household point-of-use water treatment devices are an excellent alternative for immediate and safe water provision in rural communities. The technology developed meets the World Health Organization standards for safe drinking water. The project was implemented in Capricorn District Municipality and Bizana in the Eastern Cape. The woven fabric microfiltration gravity filter point-of-use technology is driven by gravity alone, requires no water treatment chemicals, and is robust, simple to operate and easy to maintain. Small hydropower schemes can play a critical role in providing energy access to remote areas in South Africa. As a result, the small-scale hydropower project was introduced at Mhlonhlo local municipality in order to provide a rural community with grid quality and reliable electricity supply, so improving the standard of living of the receiving community. The project has seen significant impact on the quality of life of the KwaMadiba community. The design of the KwaMadiba small-scale hydropower system has proven the feasibility and technical possibility of small-scale hydropower installations for rural electrification. The integrated algal ponding system was implemented in rural towns in the Eastern Cape. This project focused on creating a demonstration-scale wastewater treatment works, while also creating a viable platform to launch sustainable food security and job creation in vulnerable communities. Another project looking at treatment of wastewater is that of the algal-based tertiary treatment in maturation ponds of wastewater treatment works. This project implemented a self-sustaining system that is independent of electricity or expensive chemicals to allow for the effective removal of pathogens from wastewater treatment works effluent. The project was implemented at the Motetema Wastewater Treatment Works in the Greater Sekhukhune District Municipality. The environmentally friendly treatment method supported a reduction in human health risk downstream. The Municipal Services Corrective Action Request and Report System, CARS, is an incident management system with a strong focus on enforcing accountability. This will improve the manner in which municipalities handle queries that are reported by communities. Further innovations linked to this project are currently being piloted. These include the setup of community-based organization water service providers that will decentralize some of the basic maintenance work to ordinary communities and so support job creation. solution. The Smart Geyser project was initiated to address the challenges of water scarcity and lack of awareness of water as a scarce commodity in South Africa. This project used the influence of another resource, electricity, to raise awareness of the cost and quantity of water usage in a household. The project focused on control of geysers, measuring and managing electricity supply, temperature settings, and water supply. Minute-by-minute information is presented to the users in an easily digestible format, either online or in the form of an app on users' cell phones. The water safety planning and wastewater risk abatement plans is a key element of risk management planning. The purpose of the project is to assist in the assessment of current practices at the identified municipalities, including the provision of guidance and technical support where required. It focuses on the development of new risk management for both water and wastewater risk management at challenged district municipalities. The Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal were the target provinces for the first rollout of this project.
Step on the top story this hour.
The Science and Technology Youth Journalism Program was implemented to promote the interest in science and technology amongst disadvantaged youth. Given that community media tends to focus on reporting such as crime, politics and sport, a need was identified to expand the range of community media to cover science and technology. The Science and Technology Youth Journalist Program was implemented in district municipalities where other IPRDP technologies have been demonstrated. The project has dramatically increased the amount of science reporting by community media, and interns are contributing in terms of science-related stories. Feedback from community media is positive.
As the DST, we look forward to improving the contribution that we make to support what we're trying to achieve through the National Development Plan and other programs. It's important for a department like Science and Technology to be at the kind of center of our national development efforts, and we think through programs like the IPRDP and other programs that we have in the DST, that collectively we're making a contribution to the three core things that we see as requiring the attention of everyone in South Africa. That is, how do we deal with poverty, how do we deal with inequality, and how do we deal with unemployment.
We as a Department of Science and Technology have demonstrated that science, technology can be used to improve people's lives, and therefore we hope that that will help us and the rest of government to fulfill the mandate that they wanted of making sure that people's lives are improved. From the Department of Science and Technology perspective, we think it is extremely important to get the public also excited about the fact that science should not be seen as something that is done by a few individuals with white coat somewhere in the laboratory. It's something that can be used to change people's lives.
I just wanted to, first of all, start with a good morning and welcome to all the speakers, all the attendees and the organizers. I see we are about 160 attendees so far, so there's a lot of interest in the session today, and I can assure you, you are not going to be disappointed. There's lots of really interesting stuff. I'm going to be introducing our first speaker in a minute, Mr. Tsipang Masia. But before I do that, let me just briefly give you an introduction to ASAF. I think most of the attendees today are familiar with the science and technology landscape in South Africa. But for those who are not, ASAF is the Academy of Science of South Africa, established in 1996 by the then President Mandela. And it consists of about 600 appointed members. So these would be members of the scientific academic community, mainly within South Africa. And I hasten to add a very efficient secretariat, I can assure you, who manage the daily activities of the Academy. So what does it do? Well, you'll find all that information on the ASAF website, including its objectives, its role, and of course, news about all of its programs and its activities. For me, the most important statement is ASAF aims to provide evidence-based scientific advice on issues of public interest to government and other stakeholders. And that's partly the reason that ASAF is involved in this project. But I need to add to that objective its important role which is undertaken through its scholarly publishing unit in terms of the management of SciELO South Africa, the open science platform, and the South African Journal of Science. ASAF's contribution to MIMI, so I'll explain. MIMI, of course, you know, is the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, and I'll just talk about MIMI from henceforth, has been mainly to support the development of the initial concept note and the preparation of a preliminary report. And so my role today is exactly that. I'm going to be continuing the supportive role to MIMI, and I'm going to now move on to what are we here for today. So it's 20 past already, and we're not yet at the core purpose of what we're going to be doing today. But to quote from the invitation, the overarching objective of the launch event is to introduce MIMI to the wider local government stakeholders, and there are 160 stakeholders on the seminar, which is very gratifying to see, and welcome to all of you. So MIMI is a self-assessment and a reflective tool that assesses innovation performance, practices and maturity levels of municipalities. And those who you're familiar with the science and technology policy landscape know that measurement and response is very important, very critical in the whole policy space, and especially in policy experimentation. So this event will share the preliminary report of the municipal innovation measurements based on the insight emerging from the pilot phase of this index. So that statement gives me the perfect entry point for Tsepang. And at this point, then I would like to hand over to Tsepang, but I just want to give a little bit of background. So Tsepang is a acting chief director for science, technology and innovation for sustainable human settlements in the Department of Science and Innovation. He is presently doing a PhD in human settlements and construction management at NMMU in the Eastern Cape. And his research topic is about enhanced people's housing, process and income opportunities. So I think that gives me the sufficient opportunity at this point. So I'd like to give the platform then to Tsepang to explain to us the objectives of the session, the purpose of the IID seminar.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Valvin, and thank you for the introduction. Good morning once again to everyone attending. We host the Innovation for Inclusive Development Seminar in partnership with ASAF, and we are very excited also to have our partners who are working with us on the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index attending today. These seminars typically are organized by the department as a way of creating a space for engagement with sector stakeholders, but in particular with government decision makers. We organize these seminars to showcase knowledge, evidence, and learning that emanates from technologies that we pilot as a department. You have just seen the video now. So we demonstrate technology projects, but as we demonstrate this technology project, we collect knowledge, evidence, and learning that can inform policy and influence government's policy. So DSI has in the past been sponsoring these IID seminars so that we are able to have policy dialogue discussions. But it is mainly to showcase technologies and decision support tools that have got a potential for widespread adoption in government, and also technologies and decision support tools that can actually improve service delivery and help us achieve a capable state, as we know that's being the vision expressed in the NDP Vision 2030. So in this instance, the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index is a decision support tool that we see having potential for widespread adoption, especially in municipalities, and also a decision support tool that can help encourage municipalities to upscale and take up innovations. Now, we have funded this pilot implementation of this tool in partnership with the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, the Human Sciences Research Council, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, And we then went into this partnership, clearly asking these three institutions to look at developing the tool itself, but also piloting the tool and reaching this milestone that we see today, where we want to roll the tool out nationally. Now, you will all know pilot implementation is more about testing if a system is fit for purpose, but also testing in real life if that system can actually achieve what is realistic and what it is set out to achieve. So the report that is being presented here is basically emanating from a pilot implementation process to test and to learn and to see how we can replicate and roll out this tool at a national scale. So we had to go through a pilot implementation process to test that. And then this IID seminar will obviously share with you a report of innovation measurements in municipalities. It is our belief also that it provides a blueprint, it provides a model of more robust reporting to come in future about innovation practices in municipalities. Now, what I want to mention also, Professor, and to everyone attending, is that there are a series of engagements that we have planned with municipalities who participated in the pilot. We will be undertaking these, I think, as learning forums in the month of August, just to provide them with feedback on innovation practices as they participated in the pilot. The MIMI partners that you see are attending today will use such engagements to refine the tool, but also to strengthen data collection mechanisms. I think we're looking at an option also to strengthen data that is collected by way of providing evidence. So as a Department of Science and Innovation, we are very excited for this pilot implementation report that's being shared here today. And we firmly believe that it provides an opportunity to support a country's smart city agenda and other related initiatives in the country about smart cities. The DSI is also pleased about the partnership. I think the partnership that we've forged with SALGA, we are very, very much pleased about this, and HSRC and UKZN. But also just the contribution of SALGA in the process, I think that is appreciated, their commitment and the adaptive leadership displayed by the UKZN a team that has been leading the pilot implementation under the leadership of Dr. Mieni and Dr. Okem, as well as the agility of the HSRC team led by Dr. Peter Jacobs. As a department, we really appreciate your contribution. We have seen this as a transformative initiative that's very complex, which really required people who can be able to lead innovation in a very complex environment. In conclusion,
just to interrupt you briefly, Tsepang, there was a request to put for your slides to be put on presentation mode. I'm not sure if there's a reason why you haven't done that, but yeah, there we go. That's much better. Okay, thank you.
In conclusion, Professor, we as a department are really encouraged by the participation of municipalities here. And I think the department will also continue to set up instruments and programs that will be designed to support municipalities to adopt innovation to improve service delivery in the context of the district development model, as well as in the context of the DSI's mandate and the DSI's decadal plan and the science technology innovation white paper. We really are looking forward to a more fruitful engagement at the seminar here. The agenda lineup is really exciting. I'm looking forward to the next presentation about an international perspective of innovation measurements in the public sector, and also the keynote address that will be delivered by our DSI DG, the messages of support from the DVC UKZN, the acting CEO HSRC, and the insights that will come from Department of Cooperative Governance around digital transformation and innovation in the context of smart city framework, as well as the MIMI pilot report itself that will be presented later on, including lessons learned and challenges that we have experienced in setting up the initiative. So with those words, Professor, we really hope that there will be an increased participation of municipalities in the MIMI rollout. And I would like to really wish everyone a productive and a fruitful engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sepang. That was brilliant. And you also saved us a bit of time, which we're going to need. So our next speaker, as you've indicated, and I know I'm going to struggle to pronounce Professor Mehmet Demircioglu's surname. Just a few words of introduction. So Professor Demircioglu is an assistant professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore and a research fellow at Arizona State University and Indiana University Bloomington. His main research focus is public sector innovation, and his work is published in Research Policy, Governance, Public Management Review, Journal of Technology Transfer, Small Business Economics, and a number of other important academic journals. So we very much look forward to the input that you're going to be making. It's always incredibly important to get an international perspective. And so I now give you the floor. And thank you very much for participating in this program.
Thank you very much, Professor David and Waldine. So yeah, actually, you don't need to pronounce my last name. So that's the reason I encourage my friends or students to tell my first name. So, and I am originally from Turkey, although I've been in South Africa once for a conference. And my PhD advisor, Sergio Fernandez, he frequently visits South Africa. So he has an academic affiliation in South Africa. And I hope you see my slides. So if there is any issues, please do let me know. So again, it's a great pleasure to talk about my research, public sector innovation, that I have been working on since 2009, when I was an MPA, Master of Public Affairs student. And the more I do research on innovation, and the more I feel that there are so many gaps, particularly in terms of measurement of innovation. And today, I will mostly talk about how to measure innovation, particularly from international perspective, which could be adaptable to the cities and other government organizations. And I will also briefly talk about why to measure innovation and providing a few examples about how we can measure innovation systematically. And before I go further, I want to make sure that we are all in the same page in terms of definitions. And the first important definition is, what do we mean with public sector or municipal government? So any organization owned and funded by governments typically, and if they do not aim to make profits, we call it public sector or public organization. So in this regard, municipal governments are part of public sector, or all the ministers or agencies, they are public sector. And the second definition, what is innovation, right? Innovation is not as same as invention, because in innovation, it is new or novel idea or practice for a public organization. So it can be new to an organization or a municipal government, but it may not be necessarily new to the entire South African public service. In fact, innovation, kind of adoption of type of innovation, is encouraged because you do not need to spend money or resources to try out new ideas if something is working in another municipal government. And of course, the context matters. And I'll briefly talk about the context later. So first, I want to start with the quote of one of my first papers. Although the paper is about public policy, but I think the same logic could be applicable to innovation research. if the function of advising the emperors, kings, sultans in the past can be considered a traditional kind of public policy analysis, then the study of public policy is as old as history. However, in a modern sense, in terms of multidisciplinary, action-focused, problem orientation, right, multi-method, it is relatively new compared to, say, political science, right? I think the same logic is applicable to innovation. And if you look at the history from like all the military advancements, maybe building like China Wall and everything, right? So these are actually innovation. However, in terms of multi-method, structured, well-designed, action-oriented, public sector innovation is very new. And I'll also talk about some historical developments. But before go further, people ask me like, why innovation, right? Why public sector innovation? Of course, innovation is crucial for efficiency, legitimacy of organizations, but these are also part of our essential lives. Look at the education, health, security, right? If there is no innovation, and it may be difficult for citizens to live together. For example, camera, maybe the camera protects people, but although it may have some unexpected consequences as well. So in this regard, innovations are affecting our lives, but somewhat tricky as well, because each innovation may bring unexpected consequences. And in recent discussions, the grand challenges are complexity issues. So innovation can solve those bigger problems, such as migration today that we see. And the recent literature demonstrate and provide clear evidence that if public organization is innovative, it provides positive impact to other private organizations. And the common examples are actually from Singapore. Singapore Public Service is innovative, so as firms in Singapore as well. Of course, they interact with each other, but if the municipal government is innovative, it may attract more opportunities from the business sector. If you look at the early studies of public sector innovation, it started in 1960s, but 1960s, they are mostly about theoretical contributions. And later on in the 1970s and 80s, there are so many case studies. They look at best practices and try to generalize the findings. But people ask me, like, what is new here, right? The new issue or the new finding or new concept is the measurement of innovation with using the innovation surveys. Because the idea of surveys, you collect data from individuals, from organizations, and then you try to identify whether there are any types of innovations, whether innovation works or not, and you try to measure employee attitude in terms of innovation, leaders' attitude and behavior, whether they encourage innovation or discourage innovation. So because of this, most of the research on public sector innovation started after 2010. And in fact, I was really impressed with the Innovation Maturity Index by you, and I was very happy to be part of this discussion here, because you have trying to measure like what is going on here and how do we improve it. And in fact, these are kind of a core understanding of innovations, because when you collect data which is representative, and you can in fact generalize some of the findings here, and you can see a pattern or several patterns, and you can identify something is working and maybe others are not working. So in fact, these are really valuable tools. And if you look at the academic literature, the last 5 years or 6 years, you can see an increasing number of innovation studies, and mostly because of this kind of surveys. There are, for example, now Korean Innovation Index surveys, and then hopefully there would be more research in the Innovation Index, innovation using Innovation Maturity Index in South Africa. So these are really, really promising topics. And I really hope that many of researchers, like many participants here, can use those surveys to advance the literature, advance what we know, and also offer insights to the practitioners and to the particularly like developing but very promising countries like South Africa, like Brazil, right? So I think in this regard, innovation is really, really important topic. And you may ask me, like, what should we study, right? Or what are the study topics? So these are some research that has been conducted which offer insight to policymakers as well. Some of the researcher and practitioners, they are interested in the innovation as dependent variable. So what I mean innovation as dependent variable is, what are the drivers of innovation? What are the conditions for innovation, right? So then you may identify like what leads innovation, maybe experimentation, maybe feedback loops, maybe resources. So these are really important connection to understand why some agencies are more innovative, why some municipal governments are more innovative. And the second kind of bigger theme for innovation research is we consider innovation as independent variable. So the question becomes here, so what? Okay, we understand there is an innovation in this agency or this city, right? What happens? And then you look at, let's say, performance of the city, and you look at whether foreign investment on that particular city or city development or growth, right? Or unemployment rate. And you can really find whether this particular innovation, it may be more about product innovation, maybe process innovation, maybe technological innovation, whether there is any impact to the important outcomes like performance. And the third set of bigger research question or research analysis, again, it also impacts the practical implication is where the ideas come from. Who are the main source? Are there like government officials? Are there citizens? Maybe in cities, citizens come together. Maybe there are like meetings with the citizens and they may offer some feedback to solve some of the problems that cities are facing. It may be like bottom-up innovation. But in other cases, government may dictate you, okay, you need to complete those innovation. And then you can look at, maybe you can compare those innovations that are top-down and other innovations maybe bottom-up, or maybe more collaborative innovation. And whether, again, like you can link to the maybe second aspect, whether the innovation increases performance. And the other aspect is types of innovation. Like, are you interested in product innovation, kind of service innovation, or maybe citizen satisfaction, right? So again, because of the need or the problems that you are facing, so then you can change the focus of the innovation. And of course, many of the research nowadays, they also look at the climate, okay? Whether leaders encourage innovation to employees, whether there are brainstorming, there are creativities encouraged, right? And you look at, again, like the first and second aspect, okay, well, if there is a creativity, do they increase innovation or do they really increase performance? Then you can look at it. And there are also other research happening, such as main target of innovation, the barriers to innovation, and some research look at the development time and resources and why some innovation takes longer time to implement, whereas some innovations are less time to implement. And what should be our focus, right? Because cities, governments, so we have limited budget and time. So if the innovation takes a lot of time, right, it also means that perhaps we are not really spending enough time for other types of issues that cities are facing. So long story short, measurement of innovation includes questions that journalists ask, right? If you ask a journalist that they report, they ask questions like what, why, how, when, where, and so on. So these are the questions that we really want to understand, ask the questions, and these are the questions that offer feedback to the citizens or offer solutions to the problems that cities or citizens are facing. And why to measure innovation? Very briefly, if we can measure something, we can understand. And if the leaders, or we can understand, the leaders can manage and lead. So, and we can also compare different municipalities, cities, like which organizations are doing better than others, right? And also innovation is typically linked with the success. And you can also promote cities or employees who are more innovative, right? So that will be another important aspect. So now I will briefly talk about how to measure innovation. The first step is we need to decide what is our focus. Are we interested in employee creativity, or are we interested in municipal governments or national governments? So based on different units, the needs or the resources may be different. So for example, in municipal governments, maybe you may look at e-government issues, you may look at technological process innovations. And for individual level, you may look at whether individuals are motivated to innovate. So again, there may be different studies that researchers can study, and different maybe levels that practitioners, policymakers can learn from those levels. And another issue is, are you interested in quality or quantity? So maybe some municipal governments like Seoul City Hall in South Korea, or Seoul metropolitan government that I also work there, they are interested in number of innovations that employees can bring. So they provide bonuses to the employees who offer some innovative ideas, okay? But some other municipal governments, they may look at, okay, provide me one idea each year, only one, the best idea, okay? And it also affects the researchers' focus. So, because there would be different kind of factors affecting many innovations versus one big innovation, which may be more radical or complex innovation. And some other research, they look at, should we focus on like the last 6 months, maybe only 1 year, or the last 3 years? Again, radical innovations may take longer time to implement. So again, like you may assess, what is your need? Do you need immediate innovations, but more incremental? If so, the time horizon would be like shorter, maybe 6 months or a year maximum. But if your focus is radical innovations, then maybe 2 or 3 years. And in terms of methods, again, Municipal Innovation Maturity Index in South Africa, it is very impressive, right? So this kind of surveys would be crucial. But you can also use some interviews as well to combine a survey which kind of gives you a bigger picture, like what is happening, right? So interviews can help you to see like the so what questions or why questions. So it is again up to you to decide what to do. And the next category is, what should we include, like including like Innovation Maturity Index or in our interviews. So you can ask questions on source of innovation, again, like top down versus bottom up, like who are more influencing innovation, that particular innovation maybe. What are the conditions for innovation? So you can talk with the policymakers and saying that, okay, tell us why there are barriers to innovation, or why some conditions work for you, but not other conditions. Or who are the main target, like why you are making that particular innovation, right? So you can add the questions in your survey, but you can also ask questions in your interview as well. Types of innovation, like is it like product or process, right? And also you may ask questions about development time, objectives, and whether the particular innovation increases performance, increases efficiency, or maybe improving process or increasing the quality. Again, the context always matters. So based on different contexts, your focus may be different. Some organizations may be more product orientation organizations. Some organizations be more process oriented. The outcomes, I think, is very important, because many innovations fail. Even if they are successful, it may increase the cost. And in fact, in my research that I conducted in Australian Public Service, and also in Italy, like somewhat Japan and Turkey as well, some innovations fail, even make the process worse. So you expect that innovations make your life easier, but it increases the cost of the process because it becomes more complex to understand, so that innovation is not successful. So I think I would suggest you that perhaps focusing on the benefits or outcomes are more important. So whether innovation is increasing, let's say, quality or citizen satisfaction or your employee job satisfaction as well, and that you may focus here. And of course, there are other aspects like target and objectives as well.
Prof. Mehmet, just to interrupt you briefly. I don't know how you're going. According to my timekeeping, you've got a couple of minutes left. So I don't want to shorten the key material you're presenting, but just to keep you on track.
Thank you very much. So I'll finish in 1 minute. So these are again like the same slide that I demonstrate, public sector innovation research. And I just want you to like show two of my research. So one of my research, I show that, well, what are the conditions for innovation? And these are the like conditions: experimentation, responding to low performance, feedback, motivation to improve performance, and but budget costs do not affect. So another research, like we look at more systematic way, individual level, group level, organizational level, and employee level. So these are some findings from the Australian Public Service. You can search in Google and you can find some of those information about what type of questions that they are asking you. So the last thing I want to talk is in OECD, there is you can check it like OPSI website. You can look at their innovations as well. These are the ones agencies submitted all over the world about the innovation index. So just think about them, discuss innovative activities in your agencies, and think like there are any issues and how today's concept could be applicable to your organizations, your municipal governments. And then please try to construct and develop scalable and implementable ideas. And again, the MIMI, Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, very promising, and I hope there will be more research and practice using that survey and advancing. So thank you again very much, and I'll look forward to your questions if you have any questions.
Thank you ever so much, Prof. Mehmet. Just leave that last slide up for a minute, because I'm not sure that we all followed. So the OECD OPSI site, that is where you submit a case study for evaluation, or what would be the purpose of that site?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. David. So that OECD, although South Africa is, I think, not OECD country, but still countries from all over the world, they submit their best innovation cases to those websites. And I also checked whether there are any submissions from South Africa. And I found that there are 6 or 7 successful innovation cases submitted by South African agencies. And I didn't see that they are from a municipal level, but they are, I think, community level, kind of non-profit level, or the government level. So the idea is that if you innovate something, and if you think that there is an innovation, you submit your case to those OPSI websites. And I think there are currently over 500, the best cases. And based on these cases, they can evaluate, because I know those people in OECD, so they evaluate whether these innovation could be included in their websites. So, and they accept cases randomly as well. So you can just go over and submit your innovation, which is adapted maybe in the last year or two, or you can submit based on their annual call for innovations. So in some, you can even randomly submit your innovation if there is any innovation. And I believe there are many innovations conducted by the municipal governments in South Africa.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. Mehmet, for your presentation and that overview really of innovation in the public sector. What does it mean? What is the definition of public sector, and what are the different types of surveys? I think we've got now we've got 20 minutes or 15 minutes for questions and answers. We have a couple in the kind of Q&A section. I'm just asking all participants to post their questions if they've got any. Two of these are questions that don't relate to this initial presentation. So there's one question: is there a link available to the MIMI index reports and data sets? And then would the CMM maturity model by PMI be helpful? So let's first of all take the question about would the CMM maturity model by PMI be helpful? Now, I have no idea about those acronyms. I think PMI might be the Project Management Institute and the CMM might be something, I don't know. Okay, so yes, it is the Project Management Institute, but we don't know what CMM. I'm not sure, Mehmet, if you would be able to answer that. Is that something that you know about?
I'm not very familiar. Maybe maybe it is better not to answer by me. But what I can just tell briefly is, I think every model and every innovation index are very valuable. And think about innovation applicable to our lives as well. Some innovations may fail, right? But the process itself brings so many values to us. So this type of models can offer insights, and we can use the models, existing models, to improve further and adapt to the local context. And based on our need, we can also use different maybe survey questions. So if your focus is, let's say, targets of innovation, then you may ask questions measuring targets. If your focus is outcomes of innovation, you may ask whether the innovation increase cost or reduce the cost and how it impact innovation. So again, I'm not very familiar with the change maturity model here, but using these and advancing these would be very beneficial.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Maybe stop sharing your slides, then we can go back to there we go.
Thank you.
So I mean, I was very interested in that article from Research Policy. That's your most highly cited article. And I'm just reading to you the last sentence because this is my question. You know, usually you have these Q&A sessions and are there any questions? And there's just this deathly silence. You think that everyone has died. And I call it the silicon silence because it's, you know, it's not clear whether anyone's even listening to you, just talking to yourself. But so I've got a question, so we don't have to get stuck in a silicon silence. But the question is, so if I'm reading this, it says, the results of the study suggest that the intrinsic factors such as experimentation and motivation to improving performance are crucial for achieving innovation in the public sector. So I've got the two questions, first of all, relate to public sector. I mean, the understanding of the public sector is that they must just do the work that they've been asked to do. You know, they need to issue ID documents and make sure that there are sufficient police presence in a particular area and that the health system works. And so there's this, it's really a kind of an emphasis on doing the routine tasks, the operational tasks, doing those well. And organizations tend to struggle with this concept of ambidexterity, where ambidexterity would refer to being able to be innovative and entrepreneurial and try new things and break the rules and think out of the box, all of those aspects, which we typically associated with entrepreneurial organizations and not with the public sector. So how do you manage to, in a single organization, combine these two cultures? Yeah. How do you think that's possible?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Davis. It's a great question, and there is, I think, big debates about like somewhat should organization theory more important than behavior. So theory is more about strategy, design, and the mission, right? The behavior is whether about like experimentation, whether employees' motivation to innovate and their satisfaction. And then I relate that question to the public sector reforms. So we know that like South Africa faced the reforms, New Zealand, Australia, like many developed and developing countries are like experimenting reforms, particularly since the 1980s. The researchers find that most of the time, like more political scientists, maybe Christopher Hood or like Pollitt and so on, why some reforms fail and why some are successful, right? Because on the one hand, we want to encourage entrepreneurship, innovation, right? But why some of the innovation attempts brings more corruption, right? Entrepreneurship maybe undermines the public value. And they find that actually there are many studies since the 1980s. If you have, so again, like in terms of government level or in terms of organizational level, if you have a routine task well established, there is a clear accountability system, and if there is a high trust, and then this type of risky, like innovative activities, entrepreneurship can in fact increase innovation and performance. But if there is not enough institutionalization, or if the system is already corrupted, and if again there is not clear accountability systems, and then you try to make reforms leading like more privatization or more about market-based type of innovations, right? It may fail, or it may even increase bribery or corruption because, again, the system is not well established. So in my research, we look at the Australian public service, and I also look at like some of the research in the United States and UK, where like the corruption is less and the punishment of the like bribery or corruption is severe. And in these cases, the experimentation kind of failing some of the time, or the motivation, these are really leading a success, right? Because the system is well established. But in other cases, still, I think you need to design the system well, but then employees have some incentive to try out new ideas. And maybe the employees can trust the leaders, right? There would be some trust, mutual trust, and a better communication. And in this regard, I think the experimentation, like most individual level outcomes, could lead a better outcomes. And one reason is, of course, employees know citizens, right? They can interact with them. They can identify the problems that citizens are facing. Top leaders, maybe the top level like government officials, may not really understand the local context. So in this regard, I think the local context is very important. And also, after building the system well, encouraging employees to bring more ideas and kind of trusting them, more empowerment can lead a positive impact. But it is a big question to answer like in a few minutes. So thank you very much for the excellent question.
Brilliant. Okay, no, I mean, that clarifies it. Also, I think that addresses one of the questions in the Q&A, which says, from experience, how difficult is it to integrate innovative thinking into local government culture? So, I mean, you were talking about that really. I guess, I mean, a sort of a related question would be the question, I mean, we have these things like the Global Innovation Index,
yes,
which is very private sector oriented. And I mean, there's an ideological component there, because the ideological component is simple, that the center of innovation, the locus of innovation is private firms, and it doesn't happen in the government sector. And so when you see diagrams of the National System of Innovation, in the middle, you know, with a star around it, is always firm level innovation. No one ever talks about public sector innovation. So, I mean, look, why is it not possible maybe to develop something like a public sector innovation index and use that as a comparative basis, and also to identify exactly that question, you know, from experience, which local authorities are able to successfully integrate innovation into sort of local government culture, if you like. So that might be one way of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an excellent question. And honestly, so my co-author, Kohei Suzuki, so he's at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and we published one piece using this GIA, kind of Global Innovation Index. But the main problem for this one is it's a private sector or firm focused. And in fact, there is a big issue that you cannot really compare like the effectiveness of public service or innovativeness of entrepreneurship of the public organizations. So there is a big need here. And hopefully maybe in South African case, at least they can maybe compare cities across each other, right? Then it will maybe give a guidance maybe for maybe a good example for other municipal governments as well. I think the starting point, that hopefully there should be a starting point that the leaders, maybe in the city level or government level, they can try to identify like how to increase innovation at the public sector level, not the private, but in terms of bureaucracy, how they operate, in terms of the climate of organization. I think there is a big need in this case. So.
Okay, brilliant. No, nice. It'd be interesting to see. So I think we've got where's it 12:05, 12:06 now. So we've kind of run out of time. I see that on the questions and answers, David Kutsia is continuing the discussion really about this tension between compliance and entrepreneurial activity. And I think let's leave that in the background for the moment. You know, there are ways of managing that, and that's what you've indicated. And I'm sure that this is a question which will be addressed in the later discussions. So at this stage, I think I would like to say thank you very much, Mehmet. I really apologize. I should have known it was Turkey because it would have been easy just to Google it and find it. But that was what I was told, and I didn't check it. Yeah. So in any case, it was a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed about that.
No, please do not worry. So actually, if you look at the Turkey, most of the people immigrated from other places, or there are locals that historically 100,000 years ago. And my DNA shows that actually 30% of my DNA is Italian.
Oh, wow.
I don't know where it comes. So yeah, I think good guess, because it is more than Asian genes.
There we go. How did we know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, thank you very much. That was great. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to participate in the discussions during the day. But if you're not, then of course we understand. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So at this point, let me now go to our next speaker. So I just must pull up the information. So our next speaker is Dr. Phil Ndwaga, who's going to be giving us a keynote address. Phil, it's a great pleasure to have you on this platform attending this seminar. I'll very briefly give some background. You have a BSc, an MSc and PhD from University of Witwatersrand, and your academic career includes serving as a professor of science and technology policy at the University of Pretoria and physics lectureships at Wits. So it's at Wits, sorry, University of South Africa and Fort Hare. We all know you very well as the DG of the Department of Science and Innovation, despite what the video told us about Department of Science and Technology, but formerly the director in the Department of Arts, Culture, Science and Technology, and you serve on NACI. You are a celebrity within the science and technology community, and I don't think I need to give much more introduction. I still have copies, by the way, of the South African Technology Foresight Project outputs in my office at the University of Pretoria, which is very ill-frequented right now. Hopefully one day we'll get back to the stage where I can go back into the office regularly. But Phil, it's a great pleasure to have you with us today. Hopefully you are there. I haven't looked to see whether you are in attendance. Phil, you're here. Brilliant. So Phil, over to you. You're giving us the keynote address. I have no idea what it's about, and that's what you're going to be telling us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dave. I'm not sure what keynote address means. The team asked me to say a few words to contextualize, I think, what this meeting is all about. So I'll probably make 3 points. And I followed the discussions before you allowed me to say a few words. Now,
Phil, just quickly, sorry, just to interrupt you quickly. You're quite the sound is quite low. I don't know whether you could move the computer closer to you, or I don't know what, otherwise we just almost turn up our sound on our systems. Let's see.
All right. Is that better? On the full...
Yeah, it's a bit better. Yeah, that's okay. Better. So I know you don't like shouting, so.
No, it's fine, Dave. I was just saying thank you very much for the kind introduction, and that I will probably give 3 points in relation to providing context for this discussion that you're having, and also trying to clarify that my team did not tell me that I'm doing a keynote, and I'm still figuring out after all these years in government what a keynote means, but I'll say a few words. So the first point is, why are we doing this as a Department of Science and Innovation? And you would probably know that maybe South Africans, but those who are not South Africans, that our 2030 National Development Vision describe a capable state as being the one that is able to achieve national priorities of economic transformation, inclusive growth, and efficient public service delivery through good public management and the introduction of innovation and technology to improve the capability of the state. So we are deriving what we're doing as a Department of Science and Innovation, therefore, from this NDP target. As again, most of the South Africans know, we have subsequently started to develop an implementation plan, which we call a decadal plan for this white paper. And what the decadal plan identifies is the use of innovation to achieve a capable state as an area of focus in the next 10 years. Our interpretation is that a capable state is both developmental and transformative. Good financial management, evidence-based policy and decision-making processes, management support for innovation in the public sector, in our view, are all prerequisites for an efficient and effective municipal enterprise. A local government sector that performs well, supported by technology, systems, data, and innovations investments, will help improve governance, to build confidence in the citizenry, enhance the quality of basic services that people provide, reduce poverty, and will also help in combating corruption. That's very, very important. So in line, therefore, with the white paper policy intent of positioning government as an enabler of innovation, and the policy intent that says we need to ensure a whole of government approach to innovation, we as a Department of Science and Innovation appointed the South African Local Government Association, popularly known as SALGA, as well as the Human Sciences Research Council and the University of KwaZulu-Natal, to develop, pilot, and roll out the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, MIMI, in municipalities in order to encourage the adoption and uptake of innovation in municipalities. I would assume that you have already been introduced to what the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index is, but I think it's an index in our view that measures the capabilities of individual employees and municipalities to learn, implement, adopt, and institutionalize innovations that can improve the delivery of services. And what the tool does is it benchmarks and assesses science, technology, and innovation readiness levels of the municipalities and determines innovation maturity level. I can give you the history of where this work comes from, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to do that, except to indicate to you that this tool was piloted by the project team. And in the pilot phase, the project team recruited 24 municipalities, 9 metros, 9 district municipalities, and 6 local municipalities to participate in this endeavor. However, a total of only 68 municipalities were initially targeted to participate in the pilot implementation testing of the MIMI, but due to, of course, the conditions that we all know, we were only able to get a few of them to participate in this pilot. I suspect that as part of your program, Dave, the participants will get an opportunity to be given the results of this pilot that we conducted as the Department of Science and Innovation. What I do want to leave you as key messages is I appreciate and would like to have the ongoing partnership as a department with SALGA, South African Local Government Association, University of KwaZulu-Natal and Human Sciences Research Councils on the rollout of this pilot. The second message is that as a Department of Science and Innovation, we are working very, very hard to set up a governance structure within government, which is an interministerial committee of a number of government departments who we believe need to start taking innovation to improve, whether it's their service delivery or whether to modernize their sectors or to adopt new sources of growth. And we think that the work and the discussions that you're having here today will be taken in those discussions, which will be happening early in September, around institutionalizing within the local government department and traditional affairs, as well as other government departments, to begin to think about how to institutionalize innovation within the public sector. I also would like to invite municipalities to partner with the department in the national rollout of this Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, and also importantly to encourage their participation in our programs as a department that are designed to support municipalities to scale up innovations that can deliver services and improve on services. These programs are not only funded by ourselves, but they are also funded by international partners. We have a very useful and a successful program which we have with the European Union and of course the National Treasury. And as a Department of Science and Innovation, we are piloting something which we call a Technology Acquisition and Deployment Fund, TADF, which is a call that is initially being implemented at the Technology Innovation Agency, one of the agencies that report to the Minister of Science and Innovation, where innovators or private sector firms, NGOs, or even public institutions that have innovations that they believe could assist government in introducing innovation, or municipalities to introduce innovation for public service delivery, are funded, and we pilot these, and then we look at means and ways of getting those innovations into the private sector. We also think and believe that the new district development model, which has been proposed as a new way of government working together, provides an excellent approach to introduce innovations and technologies that can renew existing economic sectors, drive new sources of growth, and create a capable public sector that is driven and supported by technology and innovation to improve the standard of living and the quality of basic services. We have started to draw a range of activities from the National System of Innovation that over the years we have been funding, and how they can help the citizens through this district development model to have better life through innovations that we have funded. Just to give you one example, it is very interesting that if you think about broadband and the services that communities in rural areas do not have, but if you look at some innovations that have been done by the public sector, such as TV-wide spaces at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and a new model of providing broadband in rural areas, which was developed by the University of the Western Cape, are becoming excellent models of how you can not only provide broadband, but you can drive new social entrepreneurs in rural areas in order to ensure that there is better service delivery and improvement in the quality of life. But I'd also like to invite all of the participants to work with us as a Department of Science and Technology in rolling out the development, the decadal plan, and in particular, how to drive innovations to support a capable state, and also creating an enabling environment for innovation across the state and in municipalities in particular. So with those few words, thank you very much for the opportunity, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Phil. Yeah, I mean, the question that you did raise about the participants being given the opportunity to see the results of the pilot program and this initial report, I think we must ask Andrew to address that. So Dr. Peter Jacobs or Dr. Andrew Ockham, they're going to be talking later, so we probably just park that issue for the moment. But I think that's absolutely essential, that everyone gets access to those documents. But thank you, that was great. I really enjoyed the 3 points, why we're doing this, and then this issue about institutionalization. And certainly you don't need to persuade me about universal broadband access. I think that's such a brilliant example. I think universal free broadband access is what we should have, but of course, this is a difficult target to achieve within a developing country. I think, Phil, there is a question and answer session after the next segment, which is number 7 on the messages of support. So I'm not sure if you're going to have the time to hang around for that. There might well be some questions for you, but if you do, it's another 10 minutes or so. That'd be fantastic. Otherwise, but thank you so much. That was really interesting and valuable. And there are a number of questions that have arisen. So I'm going to move on just to the next session so we can keep to our program. And the next session then is, as I said, messages of support from the MIMI partners. And we have one person who's not going to be talking. So Dr. Udesh Pillay isn't going to be addressing the forum, but we hopefully have Professor Moshabela and Professor Simbai. And I haven't looked to see, but Mosa, are you there, Mosa?
I'm here. I'm here, Dave.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know that we met, I don't know how many years ago, before the beginning of history, when we worked on that, it was a brochure for the treatment of HIV/AIDS, and you were writing the section about the integration of traditional medicine into the treatment. So I've looked, the bio list doesn't give us any detail about you. I know that you are the acting Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So since we last spoke, you have certainly moved up in the world. Congratulations. I'm not sure. DVC research is a lovely position, so you're going to enjoy that. But in any case, I just I think without wasting any more time, let me ask you for your message of support to MIMI.
Absolutely, and I like that you call it MIMI, because I'm more comfortable with calling it MIMI. I'm more familiar with the name MIMI instead of I would trip over myself saying that. But let me thank you, Dave, and also greet everyone who's present, all the panelists and all the attendees, and also to thank the DG, Dr. Phil Muchacha, and everyone involved at DSI in terms of the leadership of bringing together all of the partners that were involved in leading this work. And certainly it sounds like there is quite a history to it that I'm very curious to actually track and understand as we engage further. But it's wonderful to see the progress that has been made up to this point, to this place that we're at in terms of launching and the national rollout. I want to also thank the colleagues at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the School of Built Environment and Development Studies, who have been engaging actively in this work, and really congratulate you for a wonderful work done. I want to speak briefly in response largely to the DG for your point, for request of support in rolling out this work. And And I want to give context to why I think for us as the University of KwaZulu-Natal and really the province of KwaZulu-Natal, why this is so important for us to support. We're finding ourselves having to consider ourselves as a university a lot more along the lines of becoming an entrepreneurial university. We've got pockets of entrepreneurship and a lot of innovation happens there, but it's at such a small scale that it does not necessarily have a huge impact in the city and also in the province. And we still have a problem whereby a lot of our graduates do not always get employed after that and after they graduate. And there is a call for the university to really look critically at itself in terms of how it engages with this notion of innovation. Yes, we do research. Yes, we get a lot of recognition and credit for the research that we do as an institution. But for a lot of the inventors that we have in the university, they tend to not necessarily get the kind of recognition and rewards that people who are actively involved in the standard research kind of structures and funding streams tend to enjoy. And so we've been really talking a lot about this, and part of my task as DVC research is to really take this issue forward. And I'm very excited to also let you know, DG, to put it is that there is a commitment from across the leadership in the university, especially drop of COVID-19, where we had to assess the value chain for vaccine manufacturing, and we found ourselves coming short. There is a renewed commitment to innovation as a whole and making sure that the value chains are supported. More recently, in the wake of the civil unrest that we've had in the province, there is a lot more call for us to integrate better in our communities, integrate better in the city, the metros and the municipalities, in order to make sure that we are a university that is embedded. And so those are, for me, I think, enough to reassure you that there is a bigger agenda here around innovation. And there are specific activities that we're really working at, including Science and Innovation Park that we're working with DSI and CSIR to try and bring to the university. But we're looking at a bigger plan for the whole city, and really a hub and spoke kind of format for the province in terms of innovation. So I'm really going to be knocking on your door, DG, and the partners involved to ensure that we can take this work forward. You have our full support as a consortium, and we're really looking forward to support the rollout. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Musa. I'm sure the DG will be very reassured by those messages. So now I want to give the floor to Professor Simbayi. And again, I don't have any bio details for Professor Simbayi. And I also don't have any anecdotes. He's one of the few people on the program that I've never met. So I can't tell you that we met before history. But Professor Simbayi, are you there? If I just
yes, I am.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have met many of the previous CEOs of the Human Sciences Research Council, including Olive Shazana, but not yourself. So I apologize. I have no bio other than that you are the acting CEO of the HSRC, which is one of our biggest science councils and certainly the biggest human science research council. So over to you.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. The Director General, Dr. Phil Mpaya, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good day to you all. As with Professor Moshavela, I would like to thank the Department of Science and Innovation for their support which they have given to the HSRC together with its partners on this project, which they developed and piloted since 2015. It is gratifying to hear about this excellent example, how the HSRC works with DSI as part of the National System of Innovation as a key partner, and its commitment as the National Science Council with others, as our mandate includes working closely with the rest of the National System of Innovation, especially with universities like the University of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as SAGA, with the goal of providing evidence-based policy support for government. Indeed, this is in line with 2 of our own 5 strategic outcomes. Namely, our second strategic outcome is to develop a consolidated relationship of trust and influence with government to help guide and inform policy. And our third strategic outcome is to be recognized as a trusted and engaged research partner with scientific communities and civil society. At the HSRC, as with other science councils under the DSI stable, we do pride ourselves with our role in promoting innovation across various areas, such as service delivery innovations. Indeed, with strong support from DSI over the years, the same team that has been working on MIMI and under the leadership of Dr. Peter Jacobs have done, also successfully done a number of similar research projects. I'll mention a couple in passing. For example, what is termed the Innovation Partnership for Rural Development Program. That project involved customizing a monitoring and evaluation framework to strengthen technology and innovation capabilities and learning within the targeted marginalized rural districts. Second project was known as Local Innovation Advancement Tools, or LIAT for short. Its main aim was to enhance the contribution of science and technology interventions to rural development, to deepen understanding of the social and institutional dynamics of rural innovations, and to inform the work of the multi-stakeholder Rural Innovation Partnership. Therefore, the MIMI project is actually a continuation of this tradition. Finally, the MIMI project shows the main advantages of collaborating closely in applied research with government and other partners, and thereby shortening the process of converting research evidence into policy and practice, which, as we all know, at times takes quite a long time or even never. Apart from the additional financial support which DSI provided, the fact that there's joint identification of key policy issues and development of interventions facilitates this process of converting the research evidence that is obtained into both policy and finally to implement it as a practice. We therefore look forward to continuing working closely with DSI and indeed with the other partners, as well as other government departments on such initiatives. Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you so much, Professor Simbaye. That was great for our program. Thank you very much. I'm now going to move on to the questions and answers. And so there's one very big question. Phil, I would love to give this to Dr. Mdracha, but I think, Phil, it's probably been answered really in the introductory sections to the white paper. So the question is, what are the real constraints of transformational innovative solutions for our economy in order to nurture for the nurturing of talent as quality of life and bridge the gap between public, private, and technocrats? Yeah, I'm not sure. Phil, would you like to have a go at that question?
Dave, having spent some time in government, you suddenly realize that sometimes you need to spend a bit more time being an evangelist, so to speak, because things that you think are fairly simple and straightforward in other sectors, they're not easy in government. The first issue relates to the point that I think you had with the professor that was speaking before you. You have an organization or a public sector or even society that sometimes doesn't value its own innovations. I don't know if you've realized that in South Africa. So there is a big cultural problem that we have to address as a society that wants to drive and thrive from innovations. I'm guilty as such as well. I remember somebody telling me about the innovations that you see on our beaches, the cross concretes that you see on the beaches, especially around Gqeberha.
Yeah, the Dolosa. The Dolosa they're called. Yeah.
Exactly. I didn't know that this is something you don't find in any part of the world. It was started in South Africa. I'm just giving you one example, and there are many others. So the first thing that we want to try and do as a Department of Science and Innovation, hopefully working with yourselves, is that we should value our own innovations. And in valuing our own innovations, the point that was raised in the public service, and I suspect in the private sector, you then need not to fear introducing new innovations. There was a question around in a culture of an organization that wants to get on with the bottom line. Where do you place people who come with these innovative ideas? And I've got an answer for you and the team, and it comes from our president. And this is something that I think as a South African community, we should use in the time that he's the president. He says he was a chairman of one of the boards of the telcos. And one time he met an employee during the coffee break, and he asked the employee, "What is your job?" This person says, "I don't have a job description." And the answer was, "Why not?" He says, no, my job is to go to all the units in the telco and look at what they do. Sometimes I come to work, sometimes I don't come to work. And the president says, "You get paid for this?" And he said, "Yes, I get paid for this." But it was basically the person who would then come back and say, "This is how you can optimize your business processes within this unit." So I think the second thing that then we need to think about over and above our culture is to create the space for those people who have innovations to do so. And thirdly, we should then design our public procurement. Now I'm talking about the public sector. We can't find ourselves in a situation where we have the procurement that says go out in a tender and get innovations that are coming X, Y, and Z in the world and not being able to encourage your own innovations. You would know, and I'm sure the bulk of the people here will know, that a number of countries have developed their innovation capabilities by using public procurement as part of then embracing innovation. In the Republic of Korea, they use this strategy very successfully to build their nuclear energy export program. So I can't exhaust everything, but I hope that these three just start to give a sense of some of the things that we need to worry about. There are many, many, many others. And in the decadal plan, when we publish it, you will see there's a chapter that's dedicated on this. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. I think this, I'm not sure who can answer this other question, but it's really about the integration of this initiative with two other programs in government or centers. I mean, the one is the Center for Public Service Innovation Programs, and then the other is CESTI in the HSRC. So, I mean, maybe I should go back to Tsepang at this point and just ask Tsepang to explain to all of the delegates how MIMI links to the Center for Public Service Innovation and also CESTI and I guess also NACI, who are very involved in this space. So how are you going to achieve that synergy and integration between these four kind of programs within government?
Okay, no, thank you very much, Professor. I think the context is in the Science Technology White Paper. So we need to be working across a number of institutions, including knowledge generating institutions, but also the likes of SALGAS, CST, they are doing indicators, but also how do we bring all of these institutions together? The DG had a meeting with CPSI yesterday, discussing again the role of CPSI broadly in the national system of innovation. So we acknowledge that when the tool matures, we may be looking at working with CESTI, but we may also be looking at supporting similar initiatives of measuring innovation in the public sector, working with CPSI. So the tool that is being presented today has just been a tool for municipalities, but what will be an equivalent of this and what sorts of partnerships do we need? But I think the spirit and the objective and the policy intents in the white paper are about a whole of government approach, but ensuring that government and entities are an enabler to innovation. So my reply will be exactly that, Prof, that we will be looking at working with CPSI and other institutions.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's going to reassure many of the delegates who, might be wondering how this is going to work out with multiple parties really involved in this innovation index space. All right, I'm going to move on. As I said, we've got a tight program. There's lots of interesting presentations still to come. So I want to move to the next one, which is topic 9 on the agenda. So I'm going to introduce to you, when I find the information, I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Sianda Nkehli from the Department of Cooperative Governance, where he is a manager of municipal institutional establishment. Sianda has a BA from UNISA, Masters in Development Studies from University of Free State, and a CPMD from the University of Wits. And he's currently the manager of the institutional establishment in the Department of Cooperative Governance. Formerly, he was a municipal manager in Utukela district municipality, and also a corporate services director in that same municipality. So Sianda has a lot of experience both in national government departments and also in local authorities. We look forward then to your presentation. You're going to be talking to us about a subject which we have already mentioned very briefly, and that would be broadband infrastructure and digital development. So your topic is South Africa's city digital development, a perspective of smart city framework, vision, strategy, challenges, and expectations.
Okay. If you gave me 5 minutes, I'll try and round it in 10 minutes because it's too short. If you can move to the next, I'm presenting the South African Smart Cities Framework. If you can move to the next slide. What I'll be dealing with here, I'll just give a bit of a background, then I'll just get into the content of the Smart Cities Framework, which will deal with the topics as you can see there. We'll touch on the introduction and the background, South African context, South African interpretation of smart cities, and what is more important here, we should already deal with are factors that should inform the planning and implementation of the smart city initiative, smart city intervention and conclusion. If you can move to the next slide. And now as a background, as you all know that it all came up from the SONA, whereby the president came up with a dream of having a smart city in the country. And then that provoked a discussion around the smart cities within the South African context. What is important here is that we should understand that the way we define smart city within the South African context is that it defines investment in human social capital that takes place, tradition and modern communication infrastructure that fuel economic development, a better quality of life is provided, and there's a prudent management of national resources. This has been dealt with in collaboration with CSR in developing the smart city framework. And what is very important here is that nothing that a framework is merely a conceptual framework structure. We should note that, and that is just intended to share learning of smart cities and perceived limitations. And also it outlines a set of principles and critical issues to guide the decision-making of smart cities, as well as preconditions and enablers when initiating smart cities. Next slide. I can have next slide, please. In the next slide, if you look at the content of the smart cities framework, is that the purpose of it is just to guide decision making. So it's very important to understand that the smart city framework is not instructive and does not provide specifications nor prescribed norms and standards. But the objective of the SCF is actually to encourage local and international learning and also highlight South African realities that need to be considered. Also is aimed at assisting in developing a common understanding on the concept of smart city and outline a set of principles to provide guidance when decisions have to be made regarding identification, planning, implementation of smart city initiative and technologies. Finally, the factors to consider and the steps to be taken when identifying and implementing smart city initiative. Next, please. So what you see there is just unpacking really between the city and smart. The smart here is generally associated with ICT and also with the fourth industrial revolution. And in addition to this technology intensive interpretation, smart could also mean intelligent and knowledge intensive. The understanding of the term technology could be expanded to also include innovative approaches, techniques, and processes. And also if you look at the city, in this context, the city has got multiple meanings, and all catch-up phrase that includes various types of settlements within the South African context. So it can, if we say smart city, we also refer to cities, towns, villages of any size. It can even include municipalities, district locals, and custom-built greenfield cities, large new precincts development, upgrading and retrofitting aspects, as well as new residential or commercial or mixed-use development, privately developed gated communities. That's how we should understand the smart city within South African context. Can we have the next slide, please? So in other words, we just looked at slightly background of how the smart city originated. We said it originated in the 1990s, and it was merely looking at e-governance and high-tech industries to encourage growth. Research identified three dominant discourses, which is infrastructure-based services that using ICTs, urban development, creating conditions conducive to business development, and social inclusion, learning, and development are central to better meeting community needs. Smart city has got these promises, really, or opportunities, if we look at within South African context. It should be more effective, data-driven decision-making, reduced environmental footprint or impact, new economic development opportunities, improved quality of life, safer communities, enhanced engagement between municipalities and residents and should be cost savings. Next slide, please. There are also, though, smart city concerns when we come up with smart city initiative. The one concern is that interventions may happen that are not appropriate to the context. So we should note of that. And also that maybe there might be vested corporate interest when people are looking at smart cities, which we should safeguard against. Technology should not be looked at as an enabler, but it should be looked at as a starting point towards coming with smart cities. And we should have understanding of defining a city, like what I've just explained earlier on. And also we should take ethical contents into perspective when we deal with smart cities. Within the South African context is that the smart city should make a meaningful contribution to improving the quality of life of citizens. A smart initiative should be key problems, addressing key problems faced by South African cities and towns. And we are saying within South African context, for smart cities to be successful, it must take into consideration socioeconomic characteristics, that is poverty, inequality, and employment, the nature of South African cities, looking into apartheid spatial planning, municipalities' realities, that is the functionality, political stability, corruption, and competence within the municipality, regulatory environment, like we are looking at all those international imperatives, and also national policies like NDP and so on. Smart city policies, guidelines, and initiative also should be taken into framework about what is move to the next slide. Okay, what you see there is that I spoke about the 6 interdependent principles that we should take into consideration when we have to initiate smart cities initiative. You know, the most important slide here is that we are looking into the 6 interdependent variables. Is that first of all, the smart city should be smart for all, which means that it should not be at the expense of the society, and it should use technology as an enabler, which means that technology should make citizens' lives better. It must be shaped and respond to local context, which means that an ideal smart city should not drive the planning or implementation of smart cities and is informed by the real needs of the community. So that one is self-explanatory and embraces innovation, like we said, partnerships and collaboration, that it should incorporate a collective several projects, initiatives, and it must be sustainable and resilient and safe. Next slide, please. So what is important here is that these are the factors that should inform planning and implementation of smart cities. The nature and purpose of smart cities is that there should be thorough understanding of the nature and purpose of the smart city, and that it should be dealing with alignment of smart city initiative with existing planning and operations. So it should definitely depend on alignment and share smart city experiences, that this initiative should be there to enhance learning from peers. Next slide, please. This is just a diagram that puts together those principles into a very comprehensive structure of how we should look into these principles mangled within the Smart City Initiative. Can you move to the next slide? So if we really have to deal with the smart cities, we need to answer a certain questions that are the people living in our city or town satisfied with the services? That's the first question. If not, improving the delivery of services should be the first priority rather than thinking differently. Secondly, is to say, how can the city become smarter? So in other words, how can it become effective and efficient in the delivery of services? That's what we should be looking into when we deal with innovation or motivating for smarter city initiative. Next, please. So there are preconditions that we should be dealing with when we assessing the smart readiness. First step is to assess if whether the municipality and the current situation of the understanding is ability to provide services under these conditions. The intention is to establish whether there is a strong foundation to build a smart city initiative, or phrased differently, whether there are persons within that municipality to conduct smart cities. Secondly, we should assess where the municipality could improve its ability to provide services. And this means that if the municipality should be able to have the ability or can acquire certain abilities to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the delivery of services. Next slide, please. I'm almost there, Doc. So the preconditions here are just being made so simpler in the table, whereby we keep preconditions for becoming smarter. That basically, if I summarize it, you look at institutional and organizational arrangements within the municipality. We look at existing infrastructure, capabilities, capacity of government officials and communities, and then we come up with enablers for implementing it, which is a smart city plan, digital infrastructure, the skills there to provide that initiative, the partnerships that can be forged to get that done, and community involvement, so that that could be an all-encompassing framework to support the betterment of the people. The next slide. Next slide. In conclusion, I want to say, Prof, municipalities will require to be supported by DCOP provinces and SALGA and other national departments in the assistance with assessments to establish the smart readiness. So in other words, this is everybody's business. Although everything is happening at the municipal space, in fact, all delivery is happening at the municipal space. So we need to make sure that we support those initiatives, even when we do our innovations within municipalities on what we are mandated to do, but we should be assisting municipalities at their space to assess the establishment. Secondly, the capacity building program to empower local government officials and councillors and other role players would also be of value to ensure that appropriate inclusive smart city initiative implementation, and in addition, a platform needs to be provided for the sharing smart city learning amongst the players. We need to imbue our planning processes with a set of principles and values upon which we build solidarity, commitment, and unity. The smart city framework outlines a set of principles that should support the ideals and could be used to measure our collective progress in creative, inclusive smart cities. Last slide, please. The last slide, please. So it is within this context that we recommend that whatever we do in South Africa, we all support this smart city initiative, which is advancements in terms of how we should improve in the delivery of services to our communities. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you ever so much, Sianda. And we kind of run out of the time for the question and answer, which is a bit of a shame because there's far from a silicon silence, we have a silicon avalanche. So I was just wondering, Sianda, if you don't mind spending a little bit of time online and answering some of these questions on the site under the Q&A. But very briefly, let me ask you one of them. It's hard to know which one of these would be the most significant or relevant to our discussion. There are lots of interesting questions here about, for instance, are you aware of the Smart City framework developed by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies? And why do we have a dual strategy? But I think there are two questions which are linked really, which is, and the one is this, can we as a country really afford a smart city intervention or program at this stage when there are so many other challenges at local government level? But the question from Mr. Reddy, I think, or Ms. Reddy, have any of our cities graduated to a smart city as yet? and what are some of the challenges. So maybe very briefly, because we have run out of time, Sianda, do you have any thoughts on that? Have any of our cities graduated to smart city status?
Okay, maybe let me just answer about the first question about are we aware of our initiative? When the smart city was developed, it was developed in collaboration with all other stakeholders who are involved, a framework with contributions coming from various departments who are also involved as well as municipalities. We don't have to put the framework unfolded. But what I can say is that we are fully aware it's not a duplication. It also encompasses all other initiatives that have been in existence. About the municipalities, if whether within this context, can they do it? I think when I made a presentation on smart city, I spoke about the smart city readiness and how we should assess whether a municipality is ready for a smart city. That is actually explaining that we need to start there as a process. If you read the whole smart city documents, it outlines the processes that we need to follow to do assessment for the smart readiness. Or not all municipalities will be at the same level of smart readiness. They'll be smart on certain areas and not smart on others. So that's why we have to do assessments. I'm not sure whether I've responded well, Prof.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. Thank you. And if you get a chance, just have a look at the remaining questions and see if you can give some answers there. Otherwise, I'm sure we could follow up after this. So now I'm going to keep pressing on. I'm going to go to the presentations then, which relate in more detail to MIMI, the survey instrument, to the implementation report, and the lessons learned. And I think I see Dr. Peter Jacobs is here and he's already switched on his video. So we look forward to your presentation. Let me just very briefly give an intro. If you can also make sure then you address this issue about whether the delegates will have access to the implementation report and some of the material that's going to be presented, the structure of the index, etc. So Dr. Peter Jacobs is a strategic lead researcher at the HSRC, has a PhD in economics and is a C1 researcher rated by the NRF. He concentrates on the economics of agrarian change and socio-economic transitions, including the socio-economic dynamics of innovation. He has a research experience spanning roughly 2 decades and continues to lead large multi-year projects on a range of questions about innovation value chains and the benefits of innovation for poor people. Since 2015, he has helped to develop the scientific and methodological foundations of MIMI and demonstrates how it benefits municipal innovation activities. So I think, Dr. Jacobs, over to you. I mean, at the core, this is the core of what we are about today. So MIMI and how it's going to impact and benefit. So we really do look forward to what you have to say and the connection with the previous material. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Professor Balvain and all the participants. I have a screen to share just to keep my input focused, and it should be seen as an integrated component of all the other presentations on the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index. So I just hope everybody will be able to see my screen, and I'll go on to the full presentation mode so that we have everybody up there. So my focus is going to be just to lay out very briefly what the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index instrument is all about, and it's really about the science behind it all. And some of these will, of course, now be familiar with a lot of the participants because they are linked to what Meme presented earlier on when he spoke, what the DG said, and what many others have indicated already. So I'm just going to sort of drill down into the details and the specificities of the instrument. I'd love to start out by just answering one or two of the issues straight away on the CPSI This work engaged with CPSI at 2 levels, both organizationally, which means that we've reached out and interacted with the CPSI, as well as all the platforms and especially their award framework and instruments that they've developed. But secondly, we have also incorporated delegates from the CPSI on our reference team and our reference group, and CPSI therefore became integral to advising us on how we sort of should be developing this particular platform. So focusing on the science, my presentation is basically 1 slide, but I'm going to try and break the slide up for the benefit of the delegates and participants here into 5 main bullet points. Firstly is to just showcase the history of MIMI, in other words, its so-called construction timeline, then to focus on the facets of the interactive platform, then how MIMI is actually an action-oriented information and decision tool. In other words, how can the instrument be utilized? Then to sort of drill down into one of the examples to illustrate how the Innovation Maturity Index system actually works, because there were quite a few questions in the Q&A and in the chat box about how this model and framework links to a whole host of other models. Now, behind all the scientific stuff, we've got quite a few concept papers and scientific publications and articles and policy briefs out that should be accessible to everybody, especially via the MIMI a website that is being developed. And then, of course, my last slide, or the only slide really, is the slide about the future, because this is the national rollout launch, but I'm not going to take up the time of Professor Myeni, who is going to talk in greater detail about the national rollout process going into the future. So really the timeline can be summarized into this little simple diagram on the kind of raindrop there and then the cloud. Today we're talking about digital MIMI, which is the digital platform that can enable municipal officials really to engage with the underlying instrument. So the first phase started with a kind of drop there in the one corner, in the bottom left-hand corner. It started with around 2015 and 2017, and that was the first phase to really do the building blocks or the basic foundational work of MIMI. And this was a part of the learning that MIMI sort of detailed in a very large body of work internationally on municipal innovation, maturity, or innovation in the public sector more broadly. And more from 2019 onwards, we really start with phase 2, which I prefer to call the digital phase, which is really about providing a digital platform that will enable easier access by municipal officials, the final end users of the platform, to engage with it and make use of it. And so that, of course, doesn't explain really, so what is MIMI all about? To basically understand that, you've got to understand the notion of what we call a platform with interacting facets. Now, this, what I call ice cream diagram, is basically explained by means of going through each and every one of the steps to understand the different facets. Each one of those bubbles, ice cream bubbles, represents actually one of the facets that's kind of fundamental to an understanding of the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index. So where do we start? We start with the blue bubble in the center at the top, which is the Innovation Maturity Framework. And that is really essential to grasp all these other models that colleagues have been talking about earlier on in the Q&A, and also in responses to the earlier presentation on learning from international experiences. Now, this in itself, we've written quite a lot on this framework, and we've looked at, for example, the experiences of CPSI. We've looked at other frameworks. For example, colleagues in Tshwane, municipality or district or metro, engage with us on how they have developed a kind of maturity framework. Our maturity framework is essentially rooted in the tradition of understanding what is called learning capabilities. So learning capabilities, we understand within innovation studies, is about learning to learn and learning within organizations and reflective self-learning. Now, these concepts are all really, really very complicated, but if you do not understand the notion of learning capabilities, it will be very hard to understand what the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index is all about. From that we move clockwise to the next bubble, which is the pink bubble about innovation engagement instrument, which is really the self-reflection learning instrument that is underpinning it. And from there, we go to the processing of the information, which is often referred to as survey analysis. From that, we develop all these maturity indicators or maturity score. Now, the differences between what MIMI is doing and most of the others is it has built into itself a kind of what we call a learning forum. A learning forum enables engagement across different municipalities, and we have done quite a lot of work in the first and second phases of experimentation with the platform. But ultimately, what MIMI is trying to do is that last yellow bubble there on the left-hand side is the uptake use of the decision support, which is the concept that has been utilized quite extensively throughout the conversation until now, which is institutionalization. Now, institutionalization has not been accomplished yet, but we hope that we'll be able to accomplish that. And I'm sure Professor Mieni is going to speak a little bit more about that. Now, if you want to drill down into the mechanics of it, you basically have to understand that in action or in practice, MIMI is essentially rooted in the idea of reflective learning, both self-learning and shared learning. In other words, how do people learn from each other to discover new ideas of how to do things better? And eventually, it is about that last bubble, which is the uptake and really incorporation into policy change. You cannot have policy change if you do not interact and if you don't share ideas across the municipal officials at the core. Now, to operationalize this, to put it into action, the platform, it is essentially a 2- or 3-dimensional framework that we have to have in mind. On the one hand is this idea of what we call maturity levels. So there are different maturity levels that we are trying to look at, and these maturity levels, I'll sort of say more about it in the next 2 slides. And in addition to the maturity levels, these maturity levels can be looked at 2 different levels of what we call substantive science, technology, and innovation activity or actions. On the one hand, we have a dimension, what we call an organizational dimension. So our organization's learning and our organization innovation within an organizational environment broadly go to higher levels of maturity. In addition to that is what we call the individual innovation capability dimension. Now, Meme presented in one of his slides some of the data on what we call barriers or constraint to innovation. What is interesting and what is surprising is that there are 3 or 4 barriers that link to individual behavior within an organization. How, in other words, different municipal officials behave and the extent to which that can either be constraining or facilitating to innovation. Now, that is incorporated into this particular platform in a way that has not been done before in a very, very dynamic manner. Now, here I'm sort of spending a little bit of time on the maturity levels to show one of both the basics as well as the evolution and how we have advanced from very simple maturity levels to more refined maturity levels. Why am I doing this? It is to illustrate the flexibility or adaptability built into the index platform or into the instrument as it stands. So very often when we talk about innovation maturity, we have to talk about innovation along a continuum or along a kind of ladder of development, an evolutionary ladder. So we start at very low levels of maturity, and that is what we did in the IPRD program, showcased in our opening video, and that the DG spoke about quite extensively. In these particular cases, we have very limited, and what we've discovered is very limited understanding and awareness of innovation within these municipalities. But this is basically as a result of the fact that the IPRDP program, all the service delivery innovations demonstrated in that video, they were given or thrown into these municipalities. I'm not going to detail the processes behind it, but that is basically people were recipients of innovations. There was very little that came up as a result of innovative activity within the municipalities itself. But as we proceeded with the learning forums of the first IPRDP program, we discovered that there were actually a lot of innovations happening within municipalities that we have not been able to capture. And what MIMI does, MIMI enables that kind of capturing. But that is really at the low level if you just do innovation, if you're aware of innovation, or if you just manage innovation. And what we discovered, a lot of the municipalities are actually managing innovation, but there is very little shared learning taking place. In other words, are you sharing these innovations with outsiders? And I think this is a big departure point for MIMI. It's, in other words, it's not inward looking, it's outward looking, and how to change the system. But what we did with one of the learning forums when this digital phase started was we wanted to understand, are we actually, are these messages resonating with the actual officials on the ground and with what the leadership actually would require within the municipalities? And as a result of that, municipality leadership recommended massive changes in these maturity levels. And we also have had changes in what we call the organizational individual level constructs, but the changes are now a little bit more nuanced in order to kind of get a closer view of how actual learning is actually happening. So we have fine-tuned the maturity levels to document more carefully different phases and stages of learning in order for us to better understand maturity. So the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, therefore, is really geared toward understanding ways in which we can enable learning. So there is, of course, a tremendous amount of measurement involved, but measurement is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. And this is my final slide. That is why I'm saying it's one slide. What we actually need and why we went into this particular venture was to understand and document these learning capabilities that are really the anchors of moving developmental states or capable developmental states to higher levels of capability, to higher levels of maturity. Now, this can be applied in different spheres. At the moment, the CPSI utilizes a framework that is really oriented to large-scale kinds of projects and not through this kind of interactive engagement with officials, over time. What is essential of this learning process is the reflective learning process, which is done through what we call these learning forums built into the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index. And without the learning forum, uptake, use, and actual reflection on the usefulness of innovation in the local government sphere or local government sector is really virtually impossible. But we have discovered one or two things of areas where they improve, where the instrument or the platform must be strengthened. The first area is really, it's formulated in a very technical way there through a statistical measurement approach, which is about the sample size problem and the unit of observation. So even though we have validated the instrument through various itemized testing processes, really very complicated technical work, we are still worried about what we call the unit of observation, which is essentially we do not have enough municipalities embracing it and participating in it. And so this presentation is really part of a call to invite greater participation. The second one is about how to weight the score so that it reflects more accurately what is happening within a municipality. And that is directly linked to the final part that I think we increasingly value as important, what we refer to currently as the missing dimension of institutional governance. Meme spoke briefly about this, but this is an area that we're working on to strengthen the platform and the instrument. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I did not interrupt you. You ran over time very slightly, and I know you felt under pressure. And I didn't interrupt you because I actually think that what you were presenting was very germane to this whole seminar, especially that, that kind of flow chart, if you like, of the different levels of maturity. I see Lundvall's capability and learning theories all over the document. I mean, maybe you are very familiar with Lundvall's work, but he's a kind of founder of Africa Licks and a central person in innovation policy, but he talks a lot about learning and capability. And that's very much fundamental to your ice cream diagram. So in any case, thank you. I didn't, like I said, I didn't interrupt you. I wanted you to finish. And we probably have pinched some time now from the question and answer session. So let's just continue. I'm going to go to the next speaker, who's going to be talking to us. Let me just pull up my notes. So Dr. Andrew Ockham, and I'll give you a brief intro. Andrew has a doctorate in policy and development studies from UKZN. He works as a science officer at the university, And before that, he worked as a senior researcher with the Morris Webb Race Relations Institute, where he led impact assessment and trained public officials in monitoring and evaluation. So MIMI is very much about monitoring and evaluation. Andrew, I think that's sufficient from me. We certainly want to hear from you because there's been a number of questions about how municipal authorities can engage with MIMI and whether they have access to the documents and how they can become part of the program. So hopefully you're going to answer all of those questions for us. Yeah, over to you. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, David, for that introduction. And thanks a lot to Peter for laying the groundwork for me in terms of providing the background information about MIMI. So my presentation focuses on presenting what we found from the implementation testing of the MIMI instrument. Okay, so what is the purpose of the presentation? First is to provide an overview of MIMI, which Peter has touched on already. I will also share the preliminary results of the implementation testing, and then the report as a model. And it's important to mention that what we're presenting is a model of how the Municipal Innovation Practices report could be produced once we roll out the MIMI index nationally. We also show how a feedback to municipalities look like. And important to point out that all the contents of my presentation focuses on the implementation testing phase of the MIMI. So MIMI briefly is an initiative of the DSI, as has been mentioned previously. It promotes a process of self-reflection and shared learning on innovation practices among municipal officials. It seeks to enhance the innovation capacities of municipalities and their officials to stimulate and support innovation. MIMI assesses the innovation maturity levels of municipalities and their officials, and the end goal is to improve the processes of service delivery to the community. The earlier version of the framework, as has been mentioned, was developed by the HSRC. And to build on the success of the earlier version, the Department of Science and Innovation Commission, UKZN, HSRC, and SALGA to facilitate a sector-wide scale-up via an online platform. So MIMI instrument has 4 sections. The first section looks at the profiles of participating officials. That's those who complete the instrument, what demographic information do they present. And then there's a section that looks at municipal arrangements for innovations. The third section is divided into 3 constructs for assessing the innovation maturity levels of municipalities. It has construct A, which looks at enablers of innovation. Construct B looks at manager support for innovation. And the last section looks at individual innovation behavior. Each construct comprises a set of self-assessment questions. And looking at these questions, officials are able to assess themselves and their municipalities and give us information in terms of how they perform against each item in each construct of the MIMI index. And as Peter has already alluded, there are 6 levels, maturity levels of the MIMI index, maturity level 1 to level 6. So the implementation testing builds on the piloting of MIMI, which happened in 2020 and has been mentioned previously because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was very low participation. The pilot phase examined the applicability and feasibility of MIMI in collecting information that is needed to benchmark municipalities and their officials in terms of their innovation maturity. The pilot phase involves 16 officials from 7 provinces spread across 4 metros, 3 districts, and 6 local municipalities. For the implementation testing phase, although we had an initial limited number of municipalities we wanted to target, because of the experiences of the pilot phase and the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to extend it to all municipalities in the country. So in the implementation testing phase, we started with the process of creating an awareness, and part of that was an invitation from SALGA to municipal managers, which basically was asking them to nominate innovation champions from their municipalities. And the innovation champions, their primary responsibilities include being the point of contact or the contact person within each municipalities, and also to promote communication between municipal officials and the MIMI project team throughout the implementation testing phase, so that if there are challenges or there are issues that require clarification, they become the point of contact that will help us to reach out to those who require further clarification. So following the communique, we received 43 nominations of innovation champions. And then we held a briefing workshop with the innovation champions. And the intention was to familiarize them with the tools, with the MIMI tool, and also to take them through the process, and also to answer their questions in terms of any issues of concern about how to involve their municipal officials. During the planning for the implementation testing, we made the process completely voluntary, and our target audience was at least 50 officials per municipality. During the implementation testing phase, we sent out a reminder to every week to the innovation champions, and also followed up with telephonic calls where needed. Despite all our intentions and the activities that we engaged in preparing for the implementation testing, when the testing period closed, we received participation from only 55 officials from 18 municipalities across the country. The highest participation was from the city of Tshwane, 15 officials. And because of the low participation rate, it means that no municipality reached a threshold of 30 participants. And important to point out that the underlying assumption of the MIMI index is that a minimum of 30 participants from a municipality is needed for us to be able to develop a robust maturity level. So a few challenges that we experienced during the process. The first one, which I've alluded to, is the limited number of response, because municipal officials were preoccupied with responding to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we had a number of technical issues because this was the first time we were testing out the online tool. One of them prevented officials from the district level from participating in the implementation testing during the first 2 weeks. So I'm now going to focus on the profiles of the participants. As you can see here, we had the participation from 6 provinces, with the highest proportion from Gauteng, followed by the Western Cape. Mpumalanga had the least. Here we present an overview in terms of the category of municipalities. And as you can see here, nearly every 3 in every 5 participants were from the local level of government. This pie chart shows the gender of our participants, with just over 60% being male. Here we have the positions of our participants, and senior managers comprised only 20%, with middle management having just almost 50% of the participants. In this figure, we show the number of years of our participants in terms of how many years they've occupied the current position. And as you can see here, the highest proportion comes from those who have 5 years and below in terms of their years of experience, with just about 2% with more than 20 years of experience in their current position. Here we show the highest qualification of our participants, highest being those with diploma or higher certificate. And we have 27% who have master's qualification as their highest qualification. In this pie chart, now we move to the municipal arrangement for innovations. And in this pie chart, we ask our participants about whether innovation has been incorporated into municipal strategies. And as you can see here, only 16% indicated that innovation has been incorporated into municipal strategies, and we had very high non-response. And in this table, we give an indication of the municipalities where the responses come from. If you can look at the first column, it shows the number of responses per municipalities who indicated that innovation is considered to be important in the municipalities. The second one, innovation has been incorporated into municipal strategies. And as you can see, it's City of Tshwane, Msunduzi, the City of Cape Town, Berg River, and Buffalo City. This pie chart looks at whether a municipality has a dedicated unit to manage innovation. And just under 13% answered yes to that question. Here we show the year in which innovation unit was established, the earliest being 2011 and the latest being 2017.
Andrew, I don't want to rush you, but I'm going to give you another 3 minutes because we still have 15 minutes for Sitembiso, Dr. Mnyeni, and then we've got to have 5 minutes and we have to finish by 2. So I'm not sure how you're doing on your presentation. Maybe you could skip some of these detailed slides on the actual survey responses and give us the main message from the survey.
Thanks for that. I will wrap up just now. Here, the number of people who are employed in the innovation unit. Here, innovation unit with champions and very low response also. Municipalities that have innovation units and champions, very low response as well. Here, it's where the innovation projects have been implemented over the last 3 years, very low response as well. And these are the municipalities that indicated that innovation has been implemented over the past 3 years. And we also asked if they've established partnership with external stakeholders, and you can see example of external stakeholders where partnership have been established. And these are the municipalities with established partnership. And then what are the constraints to implementing innovation? Mainly legislative red tapes, funding, human resources and management. And these are the municipalities that reported constraints in implementing innovation. And here we move to the innovation maturity levels. As you can see here, we've divided the information into the overall picture, the district level, metros, and local. And as you can see, local level score the highest across the 3 constructs, although is 3 out of 6, with district municipality scoring the lowest. Here is a table with an overview of all the municipalities that participated in the implementation testing. A deals with construct A, B is construct B, which deals with the manager support for innovation, and construct C is individual innovation behavior. M shows you the maturity level. And as you can see, 9 out of the 18 at maturity level 3, 7 out of the 18 at maturity level 2. So as you can see from here, this gives an overall picture of our participants. And this is an example of a map that shows the maturity level at the provincial level. And as you can see, no participation from the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, Tshwane maturity level 3, West Rand 1, and Sedibeng 1. So this is just quickly an overview of the kind of feedback that we give to municipalities. We give introduction and background, including the methodology, description of the maturity levels with tables, focusing on each of the individual items in the construct so that municipalities can see which areas they are underperforming and how they can improve on those areas. These are further examples of the tables looking at the 3 constructs. And in this final table, we compare all the municipalities that participated so that the municipality can compare their performance with other municipalities. And then we give a definition of the maturity levels, and finally conclusion with recommendations for areas that will require improvement. So that is just an overview of of the information emerging from the implementation testing. I hope I kept to the 3 minutes. The conclusion is mainly about how important this process has been. It has enhanced the learning process towards the adoption of innovations for service delivery. Although we did not meet the expectation rate, the participation rate, it has provided valuable insights into the innovation processes within municipalities that participated. And then it has demonstrated the value and the capacity of the system to produce innovation maturity levels for municipalities. We've also learned valuable lessons and information that we need to take forward in ways of refining the instruments as we move to the next phase of the national rollout.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was really interesting. I'm not sure whether to be depressed or encouraged by the results of that. I mean, I think it's very encouraging that there's this pilot program and that we have this instrument. Obviously, we have a long way to go in terms of maturity in the, the innovation index and the maturity levels. And that's what's revealed by your survey. It takes me back to that comment from the DG about the institutionalization of innovation. And I think that is a key target that we need to achieve. We need to embed innovation maybe, or institutionalize it in using his terms. So I'm going to move on then to our last speaker, Dr. Myeni, also from UKZN. Dr. Myeni, if you're there, if you can quickly switch on your video and your unmute yourself. By a brief introduction, Dr. Myeni is a senior lecturer in housing and a research associate of the Saatchi Chair in Applied Poverty Reduction Assessment in the School of Built Environment Development Studies at UKZN. He is a co-editor of a recently published book on the political economy of government-subsidized housing in South Africa. And he has a diploma in public management, a BTech in public management, a master's in development studies from UKZN, and a PhD in development policy and management from University of Manchester. Sitembiso, over to you then for the last talk of the day. Are you there?
Thank you so much, Chair, Program Facilitator. And I think I'm building up on my presentation based on what Dr. Jacobs and also Dr. Akem has already indicated. But what is important here is that this presentation is going to give a way forward in terms of the rollout in actual sense soon after we just completed our testing. And so you could see in my outline of the presentation that I will be dealing with the purpose of the presentation and also the background to the national.
Sitembiso, sorry, we're losing some of the sound. I think you just have to talk close to your laptop and don't swallow the sound because then we can't hear you.
Okay, thank you. I will also introduce the MIMI rollout to municipalities and also invite municipalities because the very same rollout has got some benefits which are also attached to it, and also look at the MIMI future direction, and also I will conclude. Hopefully I will finish in the next 10 minutes. So the purpose of the presentation, as I've already indicated, will be to provide the background of national implementation of MIMI rollout, to introduce the MIMI rollout plan to municipalities, and also to share this plan whilst also encouraging the full participation in the MIMI rollout, and also to identify some of the benefits which are associated with the rollout then. Just to build in the process that what Dr. Okem has already indicated, which is also going to be the very same approach that we are going to follow to this. I know that the DG has already given us a huge task also to this, that hopefully we have already given municipalities who participated in the implementation testing. So that is going to be our first activity, to ensure that we provide feedback to municipalities through learning forum as part of the framework that we are using, and also through the individual report on the basis of the example that Dr. Okem also showed to us. But whilst we are there, what is critically important, this will be starting this rollout, we are inviting municipal managers to nominate innovation champions from their municipalities, so that those innovation champions should serve as contact person with each municipality, because that's only one way in which we can be able to promote communication between ourselves as the team and also the municipalities. So far, we have already received 43 nominations on the basis, and those that we have used in the testing then. But moreover, what is going to happen is that we also do take initiative in terms of training municipal officials in terms of how to interact with the digital platform, because that is crucial. But what we are also aiming to this is that in this rollout, we are aiming that in the medium-term strategic framework to at least go beyond maybe 50%, but what we are targeting is at least 50 officials per municipality, because we have got a threshold that can be able to assist us to be able to come with a maturity score to this. This slide, it gives us in terms of what we're planning to do in terms of phases, because we know that there are also, in terms of phases that we are targeting, that as we'll open for this, we are targeting that we'll need to cover all our metros and 50 local municipalities together with 20 districts. And in phase 2, then we'll embark on our local municipalities as in category B, and also our district municipalities as in category C. Then the last phase, that is when then we'll be able to complete with the remainder of the municipalities to this. I think there's also been a question in terms of how to access this instrument. So within the project itself, or the program itself, we've got a website that has been designed, which one can be able to have access to this online tool through that website. So there's been a deployment of that, there's a live deployment of that website, and I will also share, and also our colleagues can also share some information with that then. But what is also important is that, as I've already indicated, that there will be a process that will start to embark on in terms of training our officials in line with our officials. But as I've already indicated, that we are targeting, our focus will also be targeting those that did not participate in the testing, but not to say that we'll exclude those who participated. I've already seen that there's been some intention to participate to this, of which we really appreciate. But also within that, we'll also be embarking on MIMI marketing, because as we could see that we have got an identity for this, but at the same time we've got also some communication strategies. So all what we'll also be doing, there will be a rollout in terms of there'll also be some communication with municipalities, where we'll also be using some different communication strategy to this that has also been developed within the project itself. So there are some of these benefits which are linked to municipal participation here. One, if municipalities, they participate, they will have an opportunity to interact with the instrument, because they can be able to learn and reflect on their innovation capabilities for improved service delivery. Two, municipalities will get feedback, which will also include recommendation to municipalities on how then they can plan for innovation, integrate innovation in their strategies and also in plans. But there will also be some municipal feedback will also help municipalities to think of ways to manage innovation ideas, and also to institutionalize innovation, and also to develop plans that will be able to assist them to migrate from lower maturity level to higher maturity level. But also at the same time, their participation, I think the DG also indicated also identified something here. But what is also important is that their participation will also assist them in taking advantage of applying for innovation support through DSI innovation funding instruments such as the Technology Acquisition and Deployment Fund. But there are also other programs or initiatives that are also within the DSI, the Innovation for Service Delivery Program. But also their participation, I think our international speaker here spoke broadly about how then it's so important to compare different municipalities so that they can be able to understand, and that also assist in terms of applying the very same framework in terms of those learnings and so forth through the learning forums. But also, there are also a lot of other activities which are also within the project itself. Because one, we also want to, Dr. Jacobs also outlined the aspect about the fact that we have not yet institutionalized. So in terms of the other plan, as we proceed with the project, we'll still want to identify a potential host for MIMI. But whilst also doing that, then I'm sure that once we've been able to follow all the criteria that we've developed, we can be able to then launch that host institution. But also in the process, as Dr. Jacobs and also Dr. Okem also highlighted the issue about scores, the maturity scores and so forth. Within the program itself, we're also trying to establish what we call a MIMI accreditation system, which can also be able to assist us to go through a very crucial event where we'll then have what we call a Municipal Innovation Awards in order to motivate the participation in innovation. Then I'm sure that once we start to embark on that process, it can still be decided whether it is going to be an annual event for that, but I'm sure that it will also be of its first kind in South Africa. But also what is crucially important here is that we have come to an understanding, and I think it has also been a call, that there is no institution that can work in isolation. So that is why in part of what we are also doing, we'll also invite public sector partners to also invest in this initiative because that will also be crucial. And also, as already indicated, that MIMI support other DSI innovation funding instruments such as your Technology Innovation Fund. In conclusion, is that the success of the rollout will also depend on the leadership support at the municipal level. So we are calling upon municipalities to also support this invite so that we can be able to be successful, because it's one part to have a tool, but then if the tool cannot be utilized, then that will be very disappointing. So that's why then we are arguing, or we are appealing that we invite leaders to support us to this. But also the success of the introduction of the Municipal Innovation Awards will also be dependent upon the participation of municipalities to that, because that will allow us to generate the maturity which we can be able to incentivize performance whilst also providing motivation for improvement. But also the participation of municipalities to this will also allow comparing different municipalities, because that is where they will start to understand what is it that they can be able to work on with an intention to improve them. I think one critical point that is important here, since we want to embark in the process of the rollout, we are now inviting municipalities to register their interest on the basis of the email that is given, so that you can be able to consolidate and also then make a follow-up with those municipalities. Thank you so much, Chair, for your time.
Thank you so much, Sitembi. So there was ongoing problems with the sound. I'm not sure what it was. It wasn't the way in which you were projecting your voice. It was something to do with your microphone. I don't know. In any case, I'm sure that there are lots of questions and answers, and we're not going to have time at all to deal with them. But I just wanted to, at this point, thank all the attendees and the presenters for a really interesting and engaging seminar. I think that if I were to have any comments at all, maybe we had inadequate time really to look in more detail at the MIMI reports and the implementation and the lessons learned and what the future directions will be. Because I think that is part of this, a very important part of this process of institutionalizing innovation and improving public service delivery. So maybe that's for another day, but I'm now going to hand over to our final speaker, Mr. Tiani Ngubeni, who I know is present. I can see his. So Tiani, if you'd like to unmute yourself and turn on your video and just give the final closing remarks. There you go.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Prof, and good afternoon to the colleagues and everyone who managed to be with us. I think we did not have enough time, I think, to go through all the questions that are there, I think, on the question on the chat box. But however, we'll try and make time that we arrange follow-up sessions. We can do learning forums, we can do, I think, IID seminars. So we'd like to thank everyone who made time from their busy schedule. We know that there are people from national government, provincial government, local government, and municipalities. We know that there are people from the private sector, institutions of higher learning, our science councils, and also the international partners that we have there on the system. So we'd really like to thank you for being with us when we do this launch of the national rollout of our Disinterport tool, which is called MIMI. Secondly, we'd really like to thank the DSI, which is my department, for the continued support and the investment that I'm making through the system. It assists us as a country to come up with DC support tools like the one which we are launching today. Thirdly, we are grateful for the partnership that we're having with the UKZN, HSRC, SALGA, and also the different roles that are playing in making sure that we scale up this tool. And then we also like to thank ASAF for hosting us, for making sure that everything runs smoothly during this webinar. And then we would also like to thank you, Prof, for leading the agenda, for the good facilitation that we had today. I know that it was the time was not on our side, but we managed to keep us within the time frame that we have planned. And then we also like to thank Mr. Musia for giving us the opening remarks and also giving us the opening platform and the purpose of what is it that we're doing today. And also our international guest speaker, Prof. Mehmet, for giving us an insight in terms of the international perspective of the innovation maturities that are there, the maturity indexes that are there in the world. It also assists us in terms of benchmarking on how far the world has gone and where we are as South Africa as a whole. And I also want to thank our DG, Dr. Phil, for giving us the keynote address in terms of the strategic intervention of the DSI and also giving us what the decadal plan has to offer. And we also like to thank the messages of support from UKZN and also HSRC as their partners in implementation of this project. We also thank the word from Mr. Ketley for giving us an overview of South African Smart Cities Framework. And then also Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Okem, and also Dr. Mieni, they gave us more insight in terms of the tool. But even though we did not have much time to engage with them, but I'm sure hopefully we're gonna do, I think, follow-up sessions into it. And then I would like to say that all the presentations that were presented today will be shared with the participants, and also the report which was presented by Dr. Okem as well will be shared with the participant. So with that, Prof, I would really like to thank everyone who managed to attend the session. And then with those words, I think the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, and let's all be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Be safe. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Lovely. And thank you for a lovely session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.